Test 1, 2, 3. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We are testing capacity of the Bishop Professional Development Center today. But so glad to have you, and thanks, Adeline, for leadership this morning and just a great conversation. I'm not going to say too much. We're going to kick things off with Dr. Watson. He knows he has 20 minutes. And at our 7:30 meeting this morning, we put the pressure on him that he will dictate how much we enjoy the rest of the day. So he's going to set the tone for us. But we're very happy to have Dr. Randy Watson with us today.
Yeah. So as you know, I tell wherever I go, I give you a 100% money back guarantee. If you don't like it, my speaking fee is waived for the day, all right? So good to see you. I was thinking, as we sold out this Curriculum Leaders, of the very first Curriculum Leaders that we had here in Topeka, called by Andy Tompkins, then the commissioner, right? Gene, you remember, it was at what is now Washburn Tech, but it was not Washburn Tech at the time. And I don't remember the room, but it was one of those lecture rooms, where it had, and I don't know, Gene, maybe we had 30 people there. So look at this. And we even stole a few superintendents. We let them sneak in past security. So that's really good. So I'm just going to highlight a few things for you. I want to thank you for being here. Thanks for the earlier discussion. Thanks for committing to the profession. And you're doing remarkable work, and it shows. It shows in your district. It shows across the state. We have some new board members, and we have some veteran board members. What's interesting for us, it's probably more for me than anyone else, is we have transitioned in 2 years from a well-seasoned board led by, 2 years ago, Janet Wall, who served 24 years on the state board, and just, if you didn't know, just recently passed away. And now, with this board, Jim Porter, at just over 10 years, is by far the longest term board member. So we're very inexperienced and not a lot of school background. So get them in your schools, invite them into your schools. Say, hey, I want you to come in and see a math lesson. I want you to come in and see what we're doing with CTE or what, because they won't know. Some of their background is they went to school. So they're on a steep learning curve, and you can help in that endeavor. I want to share with you some new data about the success of each student and the remarkable work that you're doing. We measure, the state board said, all right, lead the world. If you remember back to 2016 when at that time Brad and I were out on the road, and then back in 21 when we redid it, I jokingly always said, because Ora knows well, I grew up in Coffeyville, so all the news in Coffeyville probably still comes out of Tulsa on a TV station. So I'm almost from Oklahoma. So lead the world does not mean we're going to beat Oklahoma, because it's really easy. I always say that. I really mean that today. It's really, So, but the metrics of the success, which is, we want kids to have 3 major skill sets leading to graduation and going on beyond graduation. I come to school, right? That's a chronic absenteeism rate we're all trying to reduce. Because when we look at that chronic absentee rate, those kids don't do as well as other kids. That's a fact. I have an academic skill set, and I have some things that we call the Kansas Can competencies. They're called SEL. It's interpersonal, interpersonal cognitive skills. When those all marry together, kids graduate high school at high rates, and they go on to post-secondary attainment in some field that they want to go to at high rates. So one of those measures, as you know, we look at are graduation rates. But I was thinking about this as I came in. So if you can't see that, it's an older gentleman saying, I'm looking for the good old days, the lost and found. And by the way, I have now reached the definition of the good old days. Okay, Bert, I've been searching and I finally found it. The good old days are whenever you grew up. Okay? And and you know what brought me to that realization was watching former students now get on social media. These are you know, I still call them kids. And the oldest of the kids that I had in Tuscan turned 60 this year, and the youngest in Andover in their 50s, and they're on social media talking about, oh, you know, remember we walked uphill in the snow in order to get to, no they didn't, all right, they did not. But the good old days are whenever we grew up. So I don't know, is this the good old days? I don't know if that's, we're not gonna go back to this. Okay? And I know you didn't experience it, but some of you experienced the, let's see how far we can throw the people on the merry-go-round, or in Garfield Elementary, or we had the 3-hump slide that we would ride down on our bicycles. Okay, that was really fun. So we're not going back to that good old days. You know, the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl. Did you know that? Always have to say it for our agency because we have some Bronco fans. See, I knew it. You know, they won like 3 games this year, right? No, they did very well. But Andy Reid, as you know, was highly successful before he came to the Chiefs with the Eagles, and that's who we're going to play. And so he spent 14 years as a head coach, and that was his record. You can see that. 224 games to the Eagles, superb one-loss record, and the knock on Andy Reid, can't win the big one. Remember that? Can't win the big one. But you have to think back. So the Chiefs hired him because, you know, we weren't winning anything anyway, right? I mean, and so if you look at, this is now the start of this year, so we've added to that. So now he's been with the Chiefs 12 years. Not quite as many games as he was with the Eagles, because we're about two years short. And he's won more games. He has less losses, and of course, soon to be 4 Super Bowls, right? I say that because as you do this work, as teachers do this work, Andy Reid was a top-tier coach 14 years into his profession. And where has he gone in the last 12? To another level. Is that right? Because he continues to learn. He surrounds himself with really good people. You could argue the Chiefs organization is one of the best, right? At getting talent. I mean, you look at some of the things that the Chiefs have had to do, like what receiver are you throwing to this week, or what running back? But he's taken it to another level. So for you veterans, you know, yes, you're at the top of your game, and now we're all trying to even get better, so that we can help kids do this work and help them be successful. So I want to share with you this. As we think about then, are we getting better? Let's look at graduation rates. And I'm going to take you back to 2016, all the way to the class of 2024, and issue the challenge as we're in the latest that you can get in January in 2025. The class of 2025 is now 4 months. Is that about right? 4 months from graduation? Wow. That's quick. You know, that's quick, especially in your own kids. So let's see what's happened over those years in high school graduation rate. Our goal is 95%. Many of you are hitting that on a consistent basis. With all kids, we have gone up 3.4 percentage points, and we're now at 89.5. And guess what? Because you hear me say this about almost every time we meet, we've never been higher. We've never been higher. And a legislator said to me the other day, because sometimes they're not nice, did you know that? Kim knew that, all right. They said, yeah, but are you just graduating kids without skills? I'm paraphrasing, a little bit longer discussion. And I said to her, that is one of the most offensive things you've ever said to an educator. That we would walk a kid across the stage simply to count a number, knowing they had no future because of their skill set. No, that's not what we're doing. And what's really remarkable about this feat that you have done is that when we look at the subgroups then we disaggregate that are so hard to move, like kids that do not speak English as their first language, and we go back to 2016, that gap was almost 10%. In any of these subgroups, right, the gap between all kids and these others were 9 point something percent. So if we're going to grow and they're going to stay the same, we'd still see a 9 or 10% gap, and we would be growing it with kids not in poverty, kids not in special ed, kids that speak English, white Caucasian kids primarily. We've increased ELL students 6.2%, and it dropped actually this year. All right? Todd, it's not a linear path every day, is it? You're looking at, but look at the trend line. We've dropped it in all students. My guess is this goes back up again next year because of the work that you're doing with the ELL kids. It did drop, but overall, 6.2. How about kids in poverty? 6.9 percentage points. How about students with disabilities? 6.7 percentage points. And I haven't seen the class of 24 data nationally. It's usually a couple of years in arrears, but I did see it 2 years ago when we were lower than we are now with students with disabilities. We were number 2 in the country, and I'm gonna go out on a limb saying we may be number 1 in the country in graduating kids with disabilities. And you need to tell that message everywhere you go. And then tell your data too, right? Remarkable that kids are graduating with the skills in order to go on, and that almost at a 2-to-1 ratio, kids that are the hardest to move toward graduation, you have narrowed the gap. And you narrowed the gap not by reducing the all. You narrowed it by increasing at a faster rate the kids that are hardest to graduate. So congratulations as you continue to work. And, you know, I'm hoping that the 89.5, when we get to the class of 2025, will put us at 90%. That's my hope. We may not see it, but that's my hope. I want you also to know that this past year, one of the biggest gains we saw was in the Wichita public school system, also our largest. So a lot of kudos to them. They worked really, really hard and saw a great return on that work. So kudos to this. And again, you have to share this. Go share this at a board meeting. Go share this at the Kiwanis Club if you still have one in your community. If not, you know, Twyla had a bookstore going on where you could get a homeless book as we came in. Go stand in front of Walmart or Dollar General, wherever people congregate in your community, and say, did you know we're at the highest graduation rate ever in our history? And they'll say, nah, it was the good old days. It was when I went to school in the 50s or 60s or 80s or 90s. The answer is no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I did not ask Lori Curtis if I could talk about literacy. I told her I was going to, and she said, do I have to come? Because that's, you know, because she knows she's really smart and I'm not. But I wanted to share with you some things that we are doing, hopefully, kind of, for some reason, keeps trying to do something I don't want it to do. So what have we done to date? And there's a lot of confusion about what is going on, I think, around literacy. So it started with a dyslexia task force between us, our agency, the state board, and the legislature. It then kind of went to the Kansas Education Framework for Literacy. You probably don't even know the title of that. That's the state board's work. I'll share that with you. And then last year, there was a bill passed called the Blueprint for Literacy. It's all great work, but a lot of confusion, even with the field, much less the public, about what is it. And I get in front, as Ben does in the legislature, and they want to ask me questions about the blueprint, which is really around KBOR. We partner with them, but you know, I can't go into depth on some of that. So I just want to, again, frame it for you as what we're trying to do. The dyslexia handbook, you know, everyone's got to be trained. We're screening 3 times a year. We're making terrific progress there. We've modified some things over the years, especially at the high school level. If we're seeing, you know, good growth, that was based upon your feedback, and that was really so important. But here's, you know, what we've been doing. Required all students in college, and this is certainly true of this fall, that they're preparing to teach, to have to pass an exam on the science of reading and take science of reading courses. In September, that started in earnest in terms of the test, but the courses have been there. That is a requirement from the state board. So as you now go start to hire students starting this spring, if they're from a Kansas college or university, you should not have to tell me they don't know how to teach reading, which many of you have told me that. We're invested up to $25 million. This number's a little hard because we started with about 10 or 15. We didn't spend all that. We added back some to retrain teachers in the elementary teachers, administrators in science of reading. You know, that's letters. And I went in with the legislature. We even read 2 pages from Dick and Jane. See, there's no response to that because most of you have no idea what I'm referring to. But in older days, when I grew up, that was the basal which we read from, Dick and Jane readers. So a lot of retraining because most of us in the room that went to Kansas College and University were trained in balanced literacy. And there was nothing wrong with that. There's people that say that was wrong. No, that was a tug of war at the time for decades. But what the latest research clearly shows, and all the reading groups agree, is that there's a better way to teach that. We instituted immediate stop 3 queuing, which that's the Dick and Jane, and the one I was looking at was they had a paper airplane flying up, and I said, how do you know? And they said, well, we can look at the picture. Looking at the picture, you know it's great. It's just not great to tell you how to read. That's where it went wrong, and so we're not doing that. And then, as you know, requiring all elementary educators and administrators by 2028 to have the science of reading to renew their license. So part of that is if you are in a district of 500 or more, we're affording you the opportunity to have facilitator trainings. And I just looked at the list that Lori put out and Ben put out, and it's extensive of where we're going, to do that facilitator. And Lori, I know we have one group. Do we have more than one group now who's graduated from facilitator training?
We have one, the other start in May.
Okay, the other starts in May. If you're in one of these size districts and you don't know about this, ask Ben later on, and we want to make sure before the money runs out that you have the opportunity to be trained and then enter into the literacy cohort that Lori's putting together. Something in the room keeps trying to access my computer. That's what's going on here. And I keep telling it no, and it doesn't like it. And so by 2028, this is what you will see on your license. There'll be a seal of literacy. If you're an elementary teacher or administrator, that's what it will look like. Right now, Ben and I are going through letters training. Unit 2 was not a lot of fun, right, Ben? Okay. Social studies teacher, secondary social studies teacher trained. I'm like, are you kidding? I told Frank Harwood, he's a science teacher, it reminded me of 10th grade biology, where I'm learning phylums and classifications, and I said to the teacher, I just want to know how to kill this thing, and write all the terms from in-depth of phonemic awareness and phonics, but I'm glad for I'm now moving to Unit 4 on the administrator, which gets me back into the planning. Okay, I'm excited about that. I'll be doing that this weekend. All right, so almost 2,700 educators have that seal on their license today. So as we're completing it, we're putting it on there. 184 educators have passed the new exam. Most of those are coming out of college, but there are a few veterans that have taken the exam and have passed. So we're on our way. We're on our way in putting that seal, and we're real excited about that and some people passing the test. Just a little bit about the blueprint then for literacy, which again may have confused you. That was a law that went into effect last year that said, how about if in the Board of Regents, we scale up having them better trained so that they can lead this effort in the future, including having reading centers across our state where you could go and get the best research in science ongoing, and I'm giving it kind of a high level overview, and that they would also develop some courses and some work that would be done later. We're working on that. Lori is a voting member of that. Ben and I try to attend as we can. Dr. Cindy Lane's leading that effort, former superintendent in Kansas City, Kansas. We're very supportive of that effort. It is struggling right now with some funding in the legislature. As you can guess, it was, well, yeah, we'll fund it last year, and then this year, it's typical. Well, maybe we won't. Which, drives any of you crazy of how, if you remember Lexia reading, or what was the other reading? iStation, yes. Now, Math IXL, right? Probably drop the funding for that soon. I'm just, how that happens in the legislature. So, if you want more about the blueprint for literacy, Dr. Lane can certainly give you more, but that's where the confusion, I think, is coming from. There's great partnership going on, but this is not a state board initiative, even though we're very involved in that. So, you're going to spend some time today, not in the training of science, that's our letters. There's other options available. There will be additional options coming up. You're going to spend some time today probably thinking about high quality instructional materials, because that's then the next step. So if you're trained in letters and you're using Dick and Jane readers, you're really going to struggle. You're going to supplement a lot. You're going to Pinterest or somewhere. I don't know where you're going, but your teacher's going to have to grab stuff because it's going to not be aligned. So aligning curriculum, and then of course training in that curriculum is hard. How many of you have had a math adoption at the elementary school in the last 3 years? Okay, quite a few. This is Randy's belief. All right, there may be research, but Randy's belief. You adopt a elementary math adoption. Now let's say, just for argument's sake, you choose Eureka Math, okay? And you go, wow, we didn't have Eureka Math before. What are you saying when you adopt that? What are your teachers saying? What are the fourth grade teachers saying? This is really hard, and our kids aren't ready for this level. Is that pretty typical? Right? But in about a year, if you train them and they follow the sequence, kids respond pretty quickly. Do you see that too? Math tends that can happen. Reading is so much more difficult, because when you do a reading adoption at the elementary, even a good one, you get like every piece of stuff ever. And there's some good, and there's, well, maybe that's not so good. And there's lots of decision-making process the teacher has to do. So the response time seems to be a little lag behind in the math, in my opinion. And then that training in those curriculum is got to be ongoing with coaching. So this is Randy's chart as we wrap up of where I see it. Level 1 is where we're at, when we think about, again, telling them you cannot access my drive. Thus, Ben said I had 20 minutes, and then he knew I took whatever I wanted. So there's the letters. There are other options at letters, but we're trying to get a foundation for literacy. We're trying to make sure that, and a vocabulary for literacy. So that, because I go across the street, and here's how lay people think about the science of reading. When are you going to start teaching that phonics stuff? That is one part of what we're talking about. One part, an important part. And then probably we're going to have to apply that knowledge in the classroom. That's where good instructional materials comes in. That's where good coaching, which may come from a service center if you're smaller, which may come internally in your district if you're a little larger. That comes into that training that we're going to be doing. And other options we hope from the college and the universities that would come from the blueprint. That's going to have to be deepened, we think. Maybe there's a level 3 at some point, where again, we're deepening our level of understanding, kind of like Andy Reid, we're getting really good. And then finally, we're going to have to rethink the reading specialist degree, which some of you may have, around structured literacy and PhD programs around that. So that's where Randy kind of sees this. This is no one else, just in my mind. But we're going to have to stack these experiences as we go on. I spent 12 years doing what you all do in a great school district with a fantastic superintendent, and I think I would have stayed doing that had he not left me to go to Manhattan, Bob Shannon. And then I went, wow, I got to do something here. I got to make a decision. You know, am I going to stay doing this? And I went into the superintendency. But the work that you do is so hard because you got to have a budget that you don't like. You got these 7-year, 5-year cycles. You never have enough money to do it. For adoption, you don't have enough money for PD, you know, and so you're always juggling, and then you have other duties as assigned. Always love that, right? But the work that you're doing is paying off. Look at what happened to graduation. All right, look at what happened to literacy and math in the last 3 years. Level 1 has decreased, levels 3 and 4 have increased. As much as we wanted, no. But that will happen as we have the snowball effect of getting better together and sharing those best practices together. That's why today things are so important, and the work that you're going to do today is so important. So, Ben, thanks for not giving me the hook too quickly. Let me run over by a few minutes. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay. I always say, while I still am given a microphone in these settings, just to remind everybody, we've got the best state chief in the country. If you don't know that, it's very true. And passion and vision, care for people, all those things that are represented by Dr. Watson are greatly appreciated. He did go over time, however, so I don't get to say all the things I want to say. No, we feel really good about the morning. We'll see about the afternoon, I don't know, but the morning is there's some options for you. And Pat's gonna kind of talk us through the logistics, but if you saw the agenda today, we really got 4 different kind of breakout sessions, and you can choose 2 of those. You can certainly move in and out if you want to and those types of things, but we're gonna break here in just a minute to move to different places. And Pat's going to talk us through where those places are. Just logistics-wise, if you haven't been in this building, there's lots of restroom options. There's some right out here, and if you walk down the hallway and just kind of keep looking to your right, you'll see restroom options. But I'll let Pat talk through just where we're going to break out here.
Okay, so we do have 4 opportunities this morning. In the Sumner room, they'll be talking about standards toolkits. This is a great opportunity for you to ask questions and hear from the people who have developed those kits. That will be in the Sumner room, which is down the hall. There are 2 rooms down the hall, and I don't remember which is which, but they're both marked, and they have the name of the session on the little stand outside the door. So one of them is on this level, one of them you'll have to go up to the 2nd level, and it's to your right, which is the Monroe room, is this big room, and we have 2 groups in here. So the TNTP people will be speaking about quality instruction and curriculum alignment, and they're going to be over to this side of the room. So as far as you can come, because we do have another group in the room that's going to be going on. The assessment people, if you have questions or need more information about assessments, go over to this corner of the room. Then our 2 other rooms are Garfield, where they'll be talking about accreditation plans, action plans, those types of subjects. And the Monroe room, no, sorry. I got them, I'm sorry. I threw myself off. So we gave you about 10 minutes. You get to go to 2 sessions this morning. So you get 45 minutes approximately in 2 subjects. So with that.
So as Pat said, we'll kind of set a break at about, we'll adjust this a little bit, probably about 11:15, 11:20 is when we'll come and tell you that you can move to a different session. But any questions about the options or locations? Very good. So we'll go ahead at this point, and you can go where you want to go, and then we'll lunch will be served.
Yeah, you too.
So we'll finish out the morning with this.
Staying on this side.
We'll do our best not to bother the assessment group over there, but I do want to note that we have all of the screens, so that is great. First of all, thanks. It's good to be back in Topeka. We're really excited to share more about the types of supports that are going to be available through KSDE as it relates to HQIMs in service of quality instruction. So again, I appreciate you all taking time from your day to be here with us as well. Caitlin and I have been with this group before, but we have included another of our TNTP staff, Kristen Hart. She's going to do the bulk of the heavy lifting today, but we're glad just to introduce you more to our wonderful talent we have at TNTP that are Kansas-based. So we're really glad to be here today. Just again, a quick note about TNTP. We're a national nonprofit organization. It's been around about 25 years. We're really committed to ensuring that all students have the opportunity to have academic, economic, and social mobility, that they can be successful in their life and their careers. And like we've mentioned before, we're partnering with the KSDE this year to really help them as they provide supports related to quality instruction. And a good chunk of our work rests within the space around instructional materials, high quality instructional materials, and materials implementation, but continue to note that it is all in service of quality instruction. In our short time today, really what we're going to do is start to share with you some additional guidance and artifacts that are going to be available to districts that support quality instruction, and then also be able to share with you a couple of ways that your districts would be able to engage in this work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Kristen. I'll let her tell you all a little bit about her as well, and she's going to lead us through this morning.
Hi, it's great to be with you. Like Corey said, I am a TNTP staff member. I live in Kansas. My kids go to Kansas schools, and I've really been enjoying the work that we've been doing with the Kansas Department of Ed. And I'm really excited to share with you the resources that are soon going to be available to the districts around Kansas. So by now, this graphic should feel familiar to everyone. As we know, KSDE has really narrowed in on a small subset of really high yield strategies to increase outcomes for Kansas students. We have structured literacy, standards alignment, balanced assessment, and quality instruction. We just heard how much emphasis and how much time is being put into structured literacy. I think he said something like $25 million, thousands of teachers going through letters training. Standards alignment, you have an opportunity today to go and view the standards alignment toolkits that the program managers have been working tirelessly on. And then you also have the opportunity to go and look at what Kansas is doing around balanced assessment. Today, what we're really going to focus on is starting to define what is quality instruction. Quality instruction is a big term. It also implies some vagueness. So take a second, like Corey said, we have all the screens, and read the different components that KSDE defines as quality instruction. Something that I want to name here, and I think is really important to hone in on, is that you see overlap in the components of quality instruction to the other fundamentals. And this is deliberate. We know that none of these can stand on their own. They're intertwined, and the only way to see student success is to ask, how do these overlap with one another in our classrooms? And so we've created a graphic that helps define how are we going to get to quality instruction in Kansas classrooms. So take a second and look at the different components. At the bottom of the staircase, we have standards and vision. We know every learning that is happening in Kansas classrooms is based on the Kansas state standards. We also know, however, that is the what, that is what we are teaching. Having a vision is how we are teaching it. Then, as has been mentioned numerous times, we know that quality materials matter. Data tells us over and over again, students who are exposed to grade appropriate content have better outcomes than their peers. Having materials, though, isn't enough. If teachers don't have effective professional learning about how to implement those materials, the materials fall short. How many of you have materials right now that are sitting in the back of the classroom and have never been opened? And that is not the fault of teachers. Sometimes, no, it's a both and. But without effective professional learning, we can't expect teachers to know how to implement the materials that are being put in front of them effectively. And then finally, at the top of the ladder, we have quality instruction. And it's intentional that it's the last one, because without these other stair steps, we cannot reach quality instruction. On the top of each one of the stairs, you see the little check marks. And these are the different tools that KSDE, along with TNTP, has produced in order to really provide guidance around what this looks like. So on the bottom, you see here for standards and vision, you have the standards alignment toolkits that the program managers have created. You also have something new that we're going to have an opportunity to look at in a second, and that's those instructional visions. And I want to say this again. Standards tell us what to teach. A vision tells us how that should look in a classroom. The next is the instructional materials. Something in my position that happens frequently is I get emails of people asking me, what curriculum should I adopt? What materials should I adopt? And the answer is that it's not that simple. Every district has slightly different needs. All materials are not created equal, and we recognize that, but there are many high quality materials available. And the question is, how do you select the one that's best for your teachers and for your students? So what KSDE has created is selection guidance for districts to utilize. We both have a content agnostic version, so it's general, and then we have content specific versions that you will be able to use for math, science, and literacy. Finally, we know we need to get into this implementation. This is something that is currently being worked on. It will be available soon. We do not have a version for you to look at it today, but it's going to be implementation guidance that says, here are the materials you're using. What do I do as a district leader to make sure that teachers have the resources they need to effectively implement those materials in your district? It takes you all the way through the selection process to a couple years into the implementation process to make sure that that ongoing continuous improvement is present. And then finally, what we hope that this leads to is quality instruction for our kids. The last tool that's being developed is an observation tool. We know that without continuous improvement cycles, we won't continue to see quality instruction. The thing we don't want to see is pockets of quality instruction without a clear pathway to expand those pockets. This tool will be available around the end of February. So I'm going to ask you right now to open a Bitly. So in this folder, you're going to see several different subfolders. The first folder is quality instruction. What you're going to see is you're going to see a content agnostic version from the Kansas Department of Education of what does quality instruction in Kansas classrooms look like. I'm going to ask you to take a second and open that document. So go to the quality instruction folder. Do you want me to go back to the bit?
Instructional visions.
Yeah, go to the instructional visions. And then pick whatever content you want to start with. Thank you, Corey. start with the instructional visions. And then pick an instructional vision for one of the 4 subject areas. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to read through that. If you're still having problems accessing, please raise your hand and Caitlin can come around and assist you. As you're reading through it, I want you to think about how does this guidance help you think about how you can support quality instructions for all Kansas students, and how might this be utilized in your role? Go ahead and discuss at your table or with the person next to you. How does this guidance help support quality instruction for all students in Kansas, and how might you utilize these resources in your role? Go ahead. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving through the other resources. Something that you are hearing constantly right now in KSDE is this focus on quality materials. And something that we know is that quality materials are a starting point in improving quality instruction. This has been mentioned, and many of you probably are familiar with this slide. Teachers on average are spending 12 hours per week creating supplemental resources. The primary sites that they're pulling from, Google, Pinterest, Teachers Pay Teachers. However, we know $1.75 billion a year is being spent on quality materials. So something that we're going to talk about is twofold. One, how do you select quality materials that are right for the students in your district? And 2, how do you provide effective professional learning to invest teachers in utilizing those materials? When students have consistent access to grade appropriate assignments, they experience more than one academic year of growth. The first step towards providing consistent implementation is the selection of quality instructional materials. So the second folder in that bit.ly, if you go back one, is the selection guidance created by KSDE. So you're going to see the content-specific selection guidance. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes. This is a longer resource for you to utilize, and something that you'll notice is there are a lot of additional links that you can click on. They can get you into the more nitty-gritty parts of the selection process. Take 7 minutes, review this document, and again, ask yourself in your role, how might you utilize this guidance? 7 minutes. If we could go ahead and come back together. So actively, even today, people on our team, alongside the program managers, are working on creating these observation guides. This is something that we hear from districts around Kansas that they really want, are these content-specific tools to go in and measure if quality instruction is happening across your building. I want to name something that's really important here, is when these observation tools are released, something that you will notice is that the language in them directly aligns to the vision documents. And this is very intentional. We want to make sure that when we are giving teachers, when we are giving parents, when we are giving school boards a vision of Kansas quality instruction, we are making sure that what we are saying we ultimately want to achieve in classrooms is the same things we are then measuring on our observation tools. I also want to name explicitly the tools that are being created are not evaluative tools. You all already have many tools for evaluation. This is another tool that measures how close are you to your vision, to Kansas' vision of quality instruction. I can't see what the heading of this slide is, so. Well, okay. I think it says, what resources can you expect? What you'll see is the list of all of the resources that are to be published. They are going to be published temporarily on a Google site. For ease of access and clarity of navigation, our hope is that it's published by February 21st. It is really important to name that within the 4 fundamentals, one of the structures that KSDE names is professional learning and professional collaboration. Tools are great. They often do not provide a through line for teachers in the classroom. We know that they need to be accompanied with effective professional learning and opportunities for professional collaboration. We see that as professional development opportunities and things even like PLCs. Not only how are we making sure that the leaders across Kansas understand how to do these things effectively, but do they understand how to then bring these to their schools and help them be a part of the framework and the thread of what's happening with teachers and PLCs. We're really excited to announce that there's going to be 2 opportunities this spring for districts to participate in both an implementation cadre and a selection network. We are currently working to finalize this. We're going to be providing to a group, a small group to start with, so that we can make sure that this process is effective, this process is efficient, and then hopefully replicate it throughout the state. Districts that are in the process or have already adopted CKLA in grades K through 5. What this network will do is it's going to make sure that these districts are following the guidance from KSDE about the effective phases of implementation. The next cadre is going to be about material selection. This is going to be working throughout the state of Kansas and is open for anybody who is currently in the process of adopting literacy instructional materials for high school. There'll be 4 to 5 virtual sessions, and we will take you through the different steps, the different phases of the selection process, and hopefully at the end of this professional learning, you will leave with a short list of different materials you're considering, and also know who do you need to be on your committee as you finalize that process.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, of course.
So that network, like if you're thinking we need to adopt high school ELA, not like this spring to implement next school year, but you're thinking like probably next year or this summer we would start a selection process, knowing that you might be a year away from implementing, that would be a good opportunity for you. So again, high school, 9-12, ELA, starting the selection process that you would undergo next year.
And how do we get in these networks?
That is a great question.
Yes, communication will be coming out soon. If you're a part of the group that's in that bucket for CKLA, you should be expecting some form of communication next week. In the coming weeks, we will send out a broader email to all of the districts who we currently have slated are a couple years away from that high school literacy adoption process.
How did you pick the CKLA group?
Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks. So for the implementation network that we're working on this year, we used the data collection that the state did last spring and looked for folks that adopted CKLA fairly recently that are in the Greenbush Service Center area.
But why CKLA?
Great question. We actually looked at the most frequently used and thought about how is a way to bring folks together that are doing the same thing that's really common in that area and in the state. So use data to make a strategic decision there for both the geography and the materials for this first opportunity. For the selection network, it's actually a little bit more ambiguous from the data collection about who is thinking about doing this for a year out. So that'll be a more widespread invitation, and I think we could do a survey that if you know that this applies to you, but potentially it's not clear in our data that it applies to you, then you're welcome to say, hey, this is us, and opt in.
Yes.
Where's that communication going to come from?
It will come from us directly, and at the end of this, it will also have our emails listed. So if you are anticipating that communication and do not receive it, you can note our emails and feel free to contact us.
So we're going to send it directly to the curriculum contact that filled out the survey a year ago. We'll include the superintendent as well. And if you're not one of those and you're like, sometimes I don't get that, just send us a note and we'll make sure. Just email Kristen and be like, hey, I want to make sure I get the invite for the secondary ELA one. Just make sure we're working with that.
So there may be future opportunities around other curriculum that are in place to work with individuals.
And I could just add one more peel back of the onion. We looked at the geographic region to create some alignment. There were 2 most frequently used materials, and then we looked at who's adopted more recently. So in the second most frequently used materials, a lot of folks had it for 4 or 5 years at that point, whereas CKLA, more folks in that subset had just recently selected. So that's how we used it, and we hope that there's more opportunities, but it's that kind of thinking for the implementation opportunity selection.
So, Caitlin, over here, they're saying they can't hear. So somebody was just asking about how do we choose CKLA. What we did is we looked at the data from the material selection and found materials that a large group was using in a small region. A question over here was, are we going to replicate this? So our job is going to be twofold, not only to facilitate this learning, but also to codify the process of how did we facilitate this learning, so that it could be replicated with additional materials in the future. Yes?
You mentioned secondary, you also mentioned 9-12. So do you mean secondary or do you mean 9-12?
Heights, 9-12.
We know that sometimes secondary is 6-12, and we work in a lot of states, so it depends. But we're going to focus 9-12.
Did you have a grade 5 and 9-12, but nothing for the middle levels?
So based on the data that we have for the highest level need in Kansas, 9-12 is first round.
Any additional questions, not only about this, but on the overarching presentation?
And also, yes, we want to talk about middle school, of course, but yeah, based on the numbers, 9-12 is the highest level.
You said the resources will be shared through a Google site. Where's that communication going to come from?
I think likely it will link to the Division of Learning Services page for now.
Can I go on the curriculum leaders listserv?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Pat.
Yes, Pat is the one, she's our gatekeeper right now.
Last question, and we got to wrap up because I want to make sure you get to your next session. Yes.
Materials where you're talking about selecting guys. Is there any talk about creating rubrics that business can use when we're reviewing materials?
So that's an awesome question. It does give you a pretty extensive guidance on how to use third-party reviews. There's also going to be a third-party review bridge document that explains how actually to go in a little bit deeper to ed reports and not only look at does this meet expectations or does this not meet expectations, but to actually look at the different criteria that ed reports evaluates so that you can go into the nitty-gritty and see whether or not that's appropriate for your school. So that section, we are not providing additional rubrics, but we are talking about how to use the ones that currently exist. Thank you so much for your time. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to email us.
Go over kind of the format that we had, because I know originally we had about 45 minutes. Looks like we're down about 35. So what we're going to do, I'm Jennifer Hamlet. I'm the STEM Math Program Manager. So each one of the content areas is just going to go ahead and give you a quick update, maybe what's coming, what's already out, and things like that. Then we'll have a Q&A session about what questions do you have around the toolkits. And then we do have about 5 kind of guiding questions or discussion questions, because we do feel like sometimes collaboration, just talking about challenges or solutions, sometimes you talking to each other is very valuable. So I will go ahead and start with math. Right now, a couple months ago, we put out our guidance document. I think a lot of people think that is the math toolkit, but there's actually an actual toolkit still coming. We just wanted to get that massive document out, because if you've seen it or been in it, it's a huge document. So that was definitely our main focus. So in our toolkit, we will have the guidance document. With the guidance document, we will be updating we're trying to take it another step or two. And one of them will be the fluency piece. If you notice, you don't really see the fluency part in there. And so we're going to look at our fluency standards, probably just highlight that cell so that you know, hey, that's a fluency standard, so your teachers will know. And then we're talking about adding an extra tab and also just having some fluency activities. So kind of a resources for your teachers to go to. That will take a little bit in development to do that. But I know that fluency is a big topic and teachers are always wanting activities to do with their students. So that will be something we're working on. The other thing is just, again, updating that glossary. So as we're building this, we discovered that we have a lot of vocab that's not in really our standards document, the glossary and the slides. So we have a team working on that right now. I probably will send that out even to teachers to get additional input, and then we'll get that updated. So again, that kind of takes a little bit. So the standards line, or for math, the toolkit, we have our guidance document, so that's in there. And it'll even have the video, instructional video of how to use the document, so that will be in there. That was sent out. We're going to have unpacking the standards, so what's the process? You'll have an unpacking template that you could use if you wanted to in your district. Unpacking of the standards for mathematical practices. So a lot of teachers know our practices, but it will break it down like K2, 3, 5, and so each practice and what could that look like in the classroom. So examples, so real examples to help them really understand what unpacking for the standards for mathematical practice looks like. We will have a depth of knowledge or rigor section in there as well, and then just some resources and things like that. So we pretty much have it done. We're just kind of waiting for branding, so hopefully that will be out in a few weeks. But it is very kind of short and sweet. It's more of a description, and then honestly, it's links with tools that you can use. So hopefully that format will work around. Okay. All right. I think that's it for math. Nate, wanna go next?
Yep.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Nathan McAllister, History, Government, Social Studies. Our toolkit is completed. There have been some minor updates here and there based on teacher feedback and improvements to the toolkit. So when you're on the website, if you're downloading the latest version, it will have a date. So for instance, the latest date is 1/17/2025. So that should be the most up-to-date version. We are 1/17/2025. I hope that's correct. We are, as of today, hopefully by the end of business today, we'll have a Google version of the toolkit that will be linked on the website. You can just hit, it'll make a copy, and then you can share it, download it, print it, whatever you need to do. It's fillable. And then the 3 elements, which include the unit planning guide, the supplemental evaluation for high quality instruction, and the constructive coaching tool will all be fillable. But the nice thing is the supplemental evaluation has a clickable yes, no, yes, no. So does it meet this? Yes. Does it meet it? No. And then you've got that. You can print it and use it however you need to. So that'll all be done hopefully by the end of business today. It was supposed to be done yesterday, but things got pushed back in IT.
What was the third thing? You said unit?
Constructive coaching tool. So the look fors there would be high quality instruction, high quality content, and then what are you looking for post classroom for the teacher? Where are they going to get PDs? Are they being afforded PDs? So on and so forth. And it's meant to be a conversation. And then I'll let Stephanie go.
I'm Stephanie Alderman-Oler. I'm the science side of STEM at KSDE. Our science toolkit is coming still. So it is in the final stages of review at KSDE, so it should be out and published very, very soon. But we've been holding off because the main tool that we see in our toolkit is providing teachers with unpacked science standards, because our science standards are so dense and complex with 3 parts to every standard. And so we have had teams of teachers working to unpack the standards and identify the key ideas, key content, key concepts, and key experiences for students for each standard. And then those get reviewed by a different team of teachers to ensure that they reflect more than just a couple people's thinking. And so that tool has taken time since it's being done primarily by classroom teachers. And so we've been holding off on getting that finalized for the toolkit, since that is the main tool for our toolkit. We anticipate the toolkit being published with the high school unpacked standards very soon. Like I said, it's in the last stage of internal review. Our next Science Curriculum Leaders meetup on Zoom is scheduled for February 18th. And as of right now, my plan is to use that Zoom meeting to walk through what the toolkit looks like and what the pieces are. So it is the hope that that will be out by then. So that's kind of the timeline we're looking for that. Our middle school and elementary teams are still in the process of writing and reviewing, and so those are still on track to be out this spring, but I don't have a set date on that yet. It's not as close as the high school ones are. So Science Toolkit is still coming soon.
Good morning, I'm Mary Williams, and I'm actually a teacher leader consultant for the ELA, English Language Arts. We have Lori Curtis, who is currently our leader, and Mary Lonker will be coming on in June. So at this time, I'm here to talk about the ELA toolkit. Ours came out January 1st. It was actually updated a little bit yesterday because of many of the links weren't talking to each other very well. So if you have tried to mess with the toolkit, there's a couple of things that I can tell you for sure that do work and a couple things that don't. One of the things, all of the links will work if you download the document. That was one of the first things that we figured out. So download the document and then all of the links should work. If you try to create a Google Doc, it gets all wonky. Some of you have probably tried that. And if you go directly from the document, the links give you an error message. We're still working on getting that to be more seamless, but again, going from org to gov created some issues with that. But if you download it, all of your links should work. In addition to that, we have set up with the service centers throughout the state to start breaking this down. And some of you might have already attended some of the things that we've worked on. In December and January, we have done text complexity workshops all across the state and have really broken that piece of the toolkit down. This month, starting on February 13th and moving on through February and the early parts of March, we will be breaking down standards alignment, the interim tests, the mini tests, and how to take that data and break it down further to be usable for your district. Starting in late March, early April, and on in through April, we will be looking at the writing tenets. So if you're interested in those and are having teachers that need to work on that, those workshops will be coming out. And again, those are like 6 different service centers throughout the state. And then in the summer, we will be looking at grammar and morphology and vocabulary and breaking that down further so that we make sure we hit all 4 of the pillars. Trying to think if there's anything else you folks need to know. Like I said, we're very proud of this document. There's a lot of good information, and if there's things that we need to be adding to it, we're going to discuss that in a little bit. So.
Thank you, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what questions do you have for us related to any one of the toolkits? Could be about the website, could be about anything. So we'll take your questions at this point. Yes?
Is there, I noticed just there's a lot of differences between the toolkits and what's included and what's not. Is there any future work towards kind of aligning the toolkit so they all contain similar tools or pieces? For example, the math guidance document is tremendous. I know that's a lot of hard work, but it's hugely helpful. And so one of the things I hear from teachers in my district is, where's that for ELA and science and social studies, because that is huge. And so I'm wondering if there's any talk about alignment, I hate to use that word, but alignment between the toolkits.
Well,
Go
there,
ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so right now, like if you, like even when you see the math toolkit come out, the format is going to, we're trying to make sure that's kind of aligned. So like the overview, the standard alignment, those steps, you'll see a lot of alignment there trying to, so if you look at it, it's gonna be like, well, they do all look the same. I think we do have some components, even like, you know, Nate has his coaching tool. Right now we are in development working on one of those for math. So it's in a process. But that's some things that we need to definitely collaborate as a team, and that is something important to us, is how aligned and streamlined can we make these things, these tools, really to help the educators. So
I think specifically she's mentioning like a spreadsheet.
no, I know that. Yeah, I know. So we haven't really had that discussion as far as will the guidance
I
document be
would
for other
really
areas.
encourage all the content areas to look at that, because that's a game changer for all of us, having all of that information right there, and it being something that teachers can add to, and we can make that unique to this district's buildings. Huge, huge help.
Right. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Mary, I know that you said this summer your guys' goal is to work on vocabulary, morphology. Are you going to be working like with science and history on how that could kind of bleed over into those curriculums as well?
I am hoping that that's part of it. We haven't gotten that far into talking with the service centers, but I will make sure that is, because I agree that needs to be, you know, the whole bringing words to life and all of that idea of making sure that it is a cross-curricular and that it's not just an ELA issue. And I totally agree with that. So I think that would be something that we could have a serious discussion to make sure that we pull that across.
Nate is our note taker. Takes really great notes. So. Okay, what other questions?
Do you anticipate, I know when you first released that math spreadsheet toolkit piece, there were changes along the way. Do you anticipate that you've found most of those? I guess my worry was my teachers download it and begin using it, and then we make a change, and then trying to make sure that information gets to all those.
Right, yes.
You know, and so I wondered, have you arrived, or do you think you anticipate more changes?
I don't know if I'll ever arrive.
Well, you know what I mean? And so
absolutely.
you have it out to all your different grade levels. And
I'll be honest with you, when it first came out, I do have some emails and say, hey, you know, more of, I think we had like first grade, second grade, third grade, and then it said like grade 7 or opposite. So those things that, you know, we caught, but I haven't had anybody, and we've been having the standard alignment toolkits that have been using the guidance documents. And I may have one here and there, but really they're slowing down. So I feel like it's in a great spot.
Okay.
I really do. The only thing I've updated recently is again the .org to .gov. All the links stopped working.
Yeah.
And I think I sent something out about that.
I don't worry about those things as much as the bigger changes.
Absolutely,
that it's like, that I know.
And really everything we found is just like edits. Like
Okay.
maybe this word, you know, sometimes some things in the standard alignment document itself and our standards, there might have been typos. So really it's just typos. It's not anything major by any means, yeah.
Good.
But every time in my newsletter, I do have a section where these are the updates that have.
Yeah, I know, but you know how that is. Then you've got a million teams to get
absolutely,
that up
yeah.
to and make sure
Yeah,
that they
I know.
are doing
And that
it.
was the only thing that we did worry about is
Yeah.
when you make it your own, make a copy. But that's why we spent hours and hours. So
Yeah.
trying to make sure that the major things were not, shouldn't have to be changed.
Perfect.
So,
All right.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? It's that wait time. Okay, we do have some kind of discussion questions just to talk to your neighbors about, and again, just a good collaboration time. And so we will have a little bit of share out, so don't be shy after the questions, because you may have a challenge that somebody else may have, and then maybe you might even, or they have a solution for you. So, so your first questions will be kind of a two-parter. So where are you currently at in your standard alignment process? And then kind of the second question is, what challenges are you experiencing with that process? Okay, so find a group or shoulder partner and talk to them, and then we'll have a share out, and we'll hear in a few minutes.
Garden City.
Like, can I just give you guys a list? I've heard people.
So, girl,
What did she
Well, where we're at, I think like, I don't think we've been focusing on kids yet. Where we're at is in alignment over the last 2 years, we've tried to have curriculum times in the elementary state context. Having some success criteria associated with objectives. Secondary, there's some of that. Some that's kind of where we're at more than we're just not having our coaches materially driven as a district. We're going to have to because I feel like it's just getting tighter and tighter. It started 2 years ago. Now it's like, how many times do they have to go in there? So we're just going to have to throw out this
Because that's not done yet. Well, I mean, it's sitting correct, but I do need
Okay, let's go ahead and come back together.
We'll probably, we've been teachers that we probably get.
Okay, so would anybody like to share out, if you want to share where you're at in your process, or even just some challenges that you're having? Great, everybody's down with their alignment and there's no challenges. What a great Friday. Nobody's having any challenges? Even like finding collaboration time for your teachers to work together. I know when I was a principal, I was in a small district and we had shared teachers, and just trying to find grade level collaboration was okay, but trying to find the high school, middle school, and all the grade school to get together was challenging. And so I know one thing that we did, we were on a 7-hour schedule for like middle school and high school. We went to an 8-hour and took one of those hours to actually create a PLC hour. So it was a little bit of, but you had to also, that does get into sometimes negotiate agreement and things like that. So it can be a big process, but it seems to be working really well. I know it's a valuable time that is being spent. So I know that's one challenge sometimes, that collaboration time. It is a huge one for districts. So
one thing that we talked about in our group is that there's some times where people are using their resource, but not necessarily it aligns to the standard. So taking both of those, the resource that you've adopted and your standard, and ensuring that they do match and that they are supporting each other. And if they don't, what are we going to do in our classrooms or whatever to fix that? So really making sure that we're honoring those standards. One thing that I'm noticing in the world of math is that there's just this still gap of conceptual understanding. So teachers can tell, here's the procedural understanding with mathematics, here's the application part of it, but they don't know the conceptual part. And there's something conceptual in every part of math. So that's a deficit that I'm noticing as I work with people across the state.
I do think sometimes with our student achievement, we see that they might understand the procedural part, but when it does come to the conceptual or even the application part, that's where our kids are definitely struggling as well. And I'll kind of piggyback on that as well. We may have our standards alignment, but then another crucial part is unpacking them. Do they truly understand what is the standard, especially with math? Sometimes they're lengthy, and do they understand what that standard is saying? Yes.
I'm struggling, and I don't know if anybody has any good ideas with how to, unwrapping is a bad word right now in my district.
Okay.
And how do we create that, I don't want to say sense of urgency, but that understanding of that importance of sitting down and doing that as a collective group versus, what I'm hearing is just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Right.
But they, we all know. But so what are other people doing to build that understanding of the importance of that?
The buy-in. Because yeah, buy-in is huge. Anybody have any ideas for her?
We've created a schedule within our day. Well, 2 days a month, we provide subs for our teachers. I have them come in on a rotating basis. So they have an hour and a half of undivided time to work on some standards alignment. So they will have 6 sessions this year. So we put the money there.
Right.
And so
we have the time, it's just that we don't want to do that work.
it's only going to be as good as the people. Like, we're using some of that peer pressure that if they come and I feed them, we cook for them.
All the things.
Yes, and so far, I mean, we're halfway through K-12 ELA. We're hoping, and then we've got our fine arts and performing arts who are doing it naturally on their own with some guidance. So they kind of some of them drank the Kool-Aid already.
Yeah, and I have some, but there's an overwhelming feeling of,
Well, many of them may have also go through deconstruction of core standards and what years ago, so now we're calling on that. I mean, it's
Maybe start with why. Like, why are we doing this? Like, getting them to kind of, whether it's connecting to your district's mission or vision or something that's important for, we want all kids to learn this, or this is really important. Get there first, and then maybe that buy-in will happen a little bit easier.
maybe look at the curriculum resources
All right. Great questions. All right, thank you. We'll move on.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. How do you measure whether your district has successfully aligned with the standards? So, take a few minutes. I want to get through the last piece as well. So, I don't know if we'll give you probably 2 or 3 minutes with your table group or shoulder partners. And how do you measure whether your district has successfully aligned with the standards? Take a couple of minutes, discuss that, and then we'll share out.
I don't know. I would just stand behind the fact. Long before I got here, the practice was those would be our common assessments, but then the question is, kids don't move on, we're just going to throw those out, or we're going to reword them, or replace them. So there's reasons why you say, how well kids are doing, like rating up the content, that's not. I just don't
Yeah, we don't necessarily either. We would hope that all of our our training assessments there would rate how well we're doing for assessments. Also, if they're 4 years into a resource, are they still using all the assessments there? And that's why, like, the mapping is for some people, it's not because they learn seniors where we make their lacking resources. We bring the healing out. Yeah, I mean, it still feels like a crapshoot. It takes the assessment work on the days and
We were working on some formal assessments, so like what the buildings are doing. But I sat down and they were reading this question and looking at the standard in the line. So he said, well, because I don't think that elements of grammar, so let's not snap to I'm going to get what conjunctions are before we seventh grade lesson. Every question was a lot to do that. And so,
Okay, we went over time. So let's come back, share out a few of your, how do you know whether you've been successful? Does anybody want to, and we had quite a few pieces last session, so what is success? How do you know when that's happening?
Well, ultimately, it's got to move the needle, right? So, what are your results telling you with regard, your formative assessments, your summative assessments, and if it's not moving the needle, then where is the disconnect? And where, we may think we have it aligned, but maybe we don't have it aligned at the right DOK level, and because there's a disconnect there between the results and what we think we've done.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one, right? I mean, if you're not seeing success in the outcomes, then we need to switch gears and do something different. Other smaller ones along the way, little markers we could.
We kind of got in a long conversation about standards-based grading, how that's done, how we quantify it, and those kinds of things. And then maybe, it's not always done in the secondary level. Maybe it should be expanding that. That's
good conversation.
I think it's important that you just identify some of those milestones. And so in our district, the fact that we have teachers in conversations and passionate one way or the other, that's a success. Because we're looking at it and we're engaging in conversation.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. When we've been doing our PLCs around the state with HDSS, when we've been talking about standards alignment and how that looks in your units, those conversation about the intentionality around those standards has probably been the most needle moving that we've had this whole year.
And to the question back here, at least at a certain level in a certain department, it's led to, okay, I want to be involved now in this because I want to be at the table and helping to make these decisions.
And that's probably happening in your PLCs or something like, yeah, good. Others?
What about just a day-to-day?
You're hearing that academic language, you're hearing the vocabulary that you've identified, you're hearing that common language amongst not only your teachers, but your kids, hopefully.
Very good.
Want to give it enough time.
So with our last bit of time, what we really want to know is what are the other supports you would like to see from our team at KSDE to support standards alignment or the other fundamentals. So we're going to give you a couple minutes to talk and then share out, and Nate will take notes when we share out about how can we at KSDE better support you, what are the other types of supports you'd like to see from us moving forward.
And this is just a geography nerd in me. Where are you at regionally so I can kind of get, in western Kansas, this is what is wanted, in eastern Kansas, so on and so forth. You don't have to give me the exact latitude and longitude unless you want.
If you want to take a couple minutes and chat about it, then we can share out in 1 or 2 minutes.
But I think professional development for teachers around the practice of the resource. And I mean, I feel like KSDE is doing a good job providing resources, right? There's toolkits, there's mini tests, there's interims, but having maybe even a video-based series for personnel, because we can't all go to our service centers all the time. Having a video-based series for teachers to look at this is breaking down the results of the interim assessments in a middle school ELA, and you have some real life people come to the table and act that out with them. And then maybe there's the video, and then there's the script of the questions that were asked, and the principal can meet with people and say, hey, we're going to watch this, and then we're going to try to replicate it. I know that feels a little bit cheesy, maybe work it out the way down.
I would agree with you. I saw the text what's happening. Sometimes
I don't disagree with that.
Doesn't align with where you're at. These are kind of bang, 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 you know, and so
And that's going to vary
Yeah, we need some like competency where to start with how to use what we have. I think if teachers can feel like everything else was an explosive child in the classroom, you build all that back. You couldn't give it the necessary headspace to learn all that. But I mean, it's hard. So they need something clear. They need something live. It's usable that they can go back and rewatch. Principals need the same.
Okay, we'll come back together. Sure. And you can just start throwing what you want at us. Just raise your hand and tell us where you're, what region, and then what you're wanting. What do you need from us? Go.
Paul Erickson. I'm the ward of South Central Kansas. I'll represent myself that way. It used to be geographically now. Well, we were talking about maybe even like KSDE has at an all-time high of providing useful materials, which we all appreciate and benefit from. I think sometimes our teachers probably we need to build the competency of using those materials, and then how do we do that? So it sounds a little cheesy, I know, but maybe even a video-based series on using some of the materials. Like, for example, after the interim test, how does a middle school ELA team have a PLC around that data? And maybe it's watching the 7 to 10 minute video, really demonstrating that, and then having a scripted list of questions then as a resource that they can take away too. So
I will tell you that at the sessions that we are having in February and March over the standards alignment and the interims and mini tests, that's exactly what we're going to be doing, because most of us do not know how to glean that data out. And then what do you do with that data after you get it? And so that's what we are going to be focusing on over those sessions across the
I would ask
state.
that you repeat those sessions.
We're going to have 6 sessions, and then there's already been some discussion as whether we can go ahead and share those slide decks. And so after the fact, I'm assuming that we would then be able to I mean, I've got to get approval, I'm not quite sure on that, but then we would be able to share those slide decks. And I know in mine that we're going to be doing in February, we have embedded videos from CAP on how to get that data and how to use that data. Yes, Beth?
I just want to say to speak to that, so one of the reasons we're collaborating with the service centers right now and doing this combined professional learning opportunities is so that we're building that capacity within the service centers to help you in the future. So this is not a one and done or a one and get.
Right.
This is, should be a sustainable professional learning opportunities that we'll be able to do over time to reach more districts, more buildings, more teachers with that opportunity so that we know that we're all speaking the same language when the training is happening. And that's huge for us. And if you're not seeing that, you need to get that feedback back to one of the program managers or myself. So, and just if you don't know, my name's Beth Foltz and I'm the director for standards and assessment work. And that's our intent, is to get this information to you. This is where we're starting. This is how we're trying to build capacity. So I just want, yes, we hear you. It's not a one and done, and we need to be able to repeat this once it's defined.
I think the assessment blueprints are critical, and I know they're coming, but once those assessment blueprints are available, real strong professional development opportunities in identifying what level of knowledge kids need to be able to get to. You know, I've been at this long enough to know we start with the end in mind, right? And the end is what it is we're asking them to do to show mastery on this assessment, and a backwards look from there. But I know that I sat in a workshop a year or so ago with Joanne McCrell, and there was hundreds of years of experience in the room, and most of us didn't agree every time what DOK level we were looking at as we looked at a particular question or task. And if we as instructors with hundreds of years of experience across the state of Kansas aren't able to get to calibrate in that way, then how are we going to get kids there? So you know, I'm really missing, and I know it's coming, and I know it's when we transition assessments that it just takes time to have it all, but I'm missing those blueprints that tell us, here's what this looks like right below, here's what this looks like right above, here's the level that they're going to be assessed at, here's the percentage of the test that's going to be looking at that. And I think there needs to be a lot of unpacking of that and then become real.
And I will address like the performance level descriptors, like for math, they were just at the cluster level. And so last summer, I know I reviewed like 205 standards, and we're having those for each standard now. So you'll, hopefully when those come out, then you'll be like, okay, what does level 3 look like for possibly like this standard? So that is really nice to, so
Yeah,
that part, that will be very, very.
I mean, I just
very
feel like
beneficial.
when we see that it's a statewide issue, that we have 30%, 32% at proficient, we can do all this work we want to do with aligning standards and think we're there, but if ultimately it's not making that difference, there's a disconnect somewhere between what our resources are asking kids to do, what our teachers understand that the kids need to do in order to demonstrate mastery.
So it will be nice to say, so level 3, your student should be able to do this, you know, and so I think that will be.
And what does that look like? Because I mean, again, as a teacher, we could have 5 teachers sitting here that think they're doing that, but what does that really look like?
Right, so the first step is getting those out, and
Yeah.
the second step
Yeah.
would be,
And
again,
then
what you're talking
real
about.
deep
Yes.
dives into those once
Yes,
those are
absolutely.
ready.
So piggybacking on videos, so we support ELA teachers, and we have done the work with SRG, and our teachers now really do understand the standards a lot better, but they have a hard time sometimes it's so abstract for them. I would love to see some videos of some concrete quality instruction so that we can use those to have conversations with teachers about, so this is a specific standard that we're struggling with. This is what quality instruction looks like for that standard. Can we pick that apart, and then how can we go back and implement some of those things? I think the visual piece is needed for some of our teachers.
And we did hear that last session.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the videos, absolutely, yeah, just having.
Just even little snippets,
Some
you know?
PDs
There's something
that-
about the power of just being able to show and see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, we had that one.
Here we thought we were responsible for the break.
Sorry, I didn't mean
In the
to
last session.
take the wind out of your sails.
Right here.
So I'm from Southwest Kansas, and I know in some of the sessions that I attended with Joanna McCrell last year, she talked a lot about content literacy was going to be a focus this year. there'd be a lot of discussion about how to read and write like a mathematician, how to read and write like a scientist, how to read and write like a historian. And we were really looking forward to that, and I haven't seen it come to fruition yet, and it's something I'd like to go back to, because we hear all the time from our science and history teachers that kids don't do well on their assessments because they can't read and write at a level to access them. So that content literacy piece.
Anybody else? Good ideas. Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it. It is appreciated. Okay, I think Dr. Proctor said we would eat at 10 after, and it's 5 after, so that will give you a little bit of a 5-minute break. We'll be up here if you have individual questions or need anything. Come on up and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, talk to us. Thank you.
Much, Ben. Well, all right, I am between you and lunch, so I'm watching the door. I am very excited to talk about today an assessment conference that we are going to have March 3rd and 4th at the Garden Inn Hilton in Manhattan. And I know usually you hear about these a year in advance. We're pushing one out really fast, so I hope everybody can send some people from their district. We have a guest speaker that will be there, Carolyn Wiley. She is from the Center of Assessment and works just a lot with balanced assessment systems and formative assessments. And she has written several books with Margaret Heritage. So, and I just got an email this morning that said the books have been shipped. So everybody that registers will get a book that Margaret Heritage and Carolyn Wiley have written, and it's the most recent one. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to have people at the from districts present, as well as our program managers and KITE, our KU people are going to come and present. We have mini test presentations. We have just good formative assessments that are not mini tests. So it's going to be really exciting, and I hope you will check it out. Pat and some others are handing out little cards that have a registration link on them. And by next week, we should have the schedule out so you can see the presentations that are there. Our CAC members are going to be involved. And if you are a CAC member in this room, would you stand? CAC stands for Kansas Assessment Advisory Council, and these are members that meet 4 or 5 times a year and give us feedback on assessments and anything else that I bring to them. So if you have questions about assessments, you can ask those people as well. So they will be there with bells and whistles and ribbons to present what they're doing in their districts as well. Any questions on assessments? Raise your hand if you're ready to look at your results from the summative assessment in April. Oh, good, because you're not going to get it. We are going to have, remember, standard setting in June. So hopefully those results will be available in the fall. So don't get ready for them in May or any other time before that. We are, however, looking for educators to review some of the item-specific performance level descriptors. Specifically, math teachers at the junior high or high school level, and then science teachers of all levels. So this is part of the performance level descriptors that say if a student scores this, they're level 1, they score this, they're level 2, 3, 4. So we need people to really review those. So if you have teachers that you would like to volunteer who might be interested in doing that, please send me an email and I will send that on to KITE. Unfortunately, this is not a paid deal. Usually we have stipends available, but it is not, you don't get a stipend for this. So if that changes their mind, it might. But if you have anybody that you know, please send that email to me. And now I'm going to switch gears. So my other thing on the agenda was the text-to-speech application. And I don't even think I have a slide for that, Pat. That's okay. The application for approval, the one that has the passage and graphics, that is due today by 5. We've had a lot of disapprovals that if you sent things in, so my team wanted to let me share some things of why they were disapproved. And a lot of them were disapproved because the flow chart, I don't think it was looked at. The flow chart where you have to answer your questions, and if you keep answering yes, and you get to the bottom, then you fill out the application. Well, I guess you answered no a lot, and you still filled it out. So that was one of the reasons why they were disapproved. Another reason for disapproval was not filling out all of the answers, not answering every question. So that's another one. Another one was the district test coordinator. We are asking that the district test coordinator submit all of those applications. And the reason that we want the district test coordinator to submit them is that 1, they come in all at the same time, and 2, we want that district testing coordinator to review all of those, make sure every box is checked. Did the student really need this accommodation? So if they didn't come from the district test coordinator, they automatically were sent back and asked that the district test coordinator submit them. So I think that was all of the things that they wanted me to make sure that you knew. Right? And I hope to see everybody on March 3rd and 4th at our conference. And there's the food.
Okay, as we continue on, have you heard that we're changing the annual conference? Has this made its way to you? I would say in a lot of ways, everything is changing. The date, the location is the same, but the date, we're moving from October. It's been at the end of October for quite some time. We're gonna hold that conference in late January, or July. The purpose, we feel like we're trying to really clarify. I think that's been some feedback we've received over the years. How's this different than maybe the MTSS symposium? Who is this for? And those types of things. So the audience, purpose, all those things we're trying to be very clear about. Really the design of the conference, Pat Bone leads that process, and we've had a lot of different committees that kind of put that design together. So what we're thinking, it's going to be a Monday, Tuesday, and half a day on Wednesday is kind of what the week will look like. And that first day is going to be, it's really about the supports, resources, some things that you're hearing about today that are going to be very well developed by that time. And so we want to spend time just talking about what those resources look like, how you can utilize those things, whether it's professional learning, actual resources that are available to you. As you can tell, we're aligning those supports to address those fundamental areas that we're very focused on with school improvement. So the audience is really your district leadership team. Anybody that's a part of that school improvement conversation on school improvement days, that's developing that action plan, that's the primary audience. Something that'll be a little bit unique on day 2, which would be the Tuesday, is we're kind of calling it maybe workshops within the conference that are specifically addressing certain areas that we oversee. So I think Dr. Curtis is planning to have our first literacy summit in Kansas. And so that will be designed for the literacy leadership cadre that she's developing through the local certified facilitators that we'll talk a little bit more about here in just a minute. But a literacy focus with a full day of just all things literacy in Kansas. We also are going to do our annual KISA School Improvement Day facilitator trainings during that Tuesday. So if you're a facilitator and you want to come as an in-person opportunity and learn what does year 2 look like, or as we transition from one year to the next, that'll be a great opportunity to do that. Some safe and secure schools focus for those that are in that world. And so all those details will be provided. But the general conference on that Tuesday is going to be all around collaboration with other districts. And we're going to be reaching out to our districts as they are submitting action plans, implementing those action plans, and really allow school districts to take the lead and just opportunities to collaborate on the things that are working very well. And then the other kind of emphasis during the conference will be as a late July opportunity. Did you know that school typically begins a few weeks later? And so we want you just to have a chance to talk about back to school time, how you want to kick things off, and that just bring some high energy on that Wednesday with some folks that can do that as a large group and just talk about how we want to bring action plans into the school, into the community. So just a different focus, different audience, very purposeful, a lot of supports, a lot of collaboration, and just thinking about how we want to get into August. So questions on the annual conference or thoughts there? Pat, anything? I see people who appear to be bringing food, which is a really good thing. We're happy about that. While they're setting up, we're going to transition. Let me know if you have questions on the annual conference, but program managers, if you guys want to come on up and we'll let you do your presentation, by then I think we'll be ready to eat. And it'll all work out. I've advocated for a long time that we should just not do lunch ever. Just skip that, but it's really playing out poorly for me. So anyway, turn it over to Jim.
Okay, we're done. That was a fast revision.
Lunch.
Okay, our quick hitter, we're going to talk about service-centered collaboration. I'm Jennifer Hamlet. I'm the STEM Math Program Manager. And so I know we kind of have been talking about this for a little bit, and I know that the sessions are going, but we're very excited that we are working on collaboration. So one of our KSDE consultants or ourselves is presenting with the service centers consultants, pairing up, collaborating, and so and really with that intention too, that we talked about even a session earlier, that it doesn't have to stop there. So since we're collaborating with the service centers, they can continue also with that message to all the different districts and things like that, along with KSDE. So these are locations where we're doing all of our PT or professional learning. Okay, so this is my wonderful math team, and they've worked really, really hard on, again, presenting slides, our guidance document, our standard alignment toolkit that's coming out. So I appreciate of them and all their hard work. I'm just going to do a little quick hit about what our days are pretty much through this summer. So days 1 and 2, right now they're kind of going on, is going to be around the standard alignment toolkit and how to unpack those. We do give like a blank template as well that you can take back to their districts. In the spring, we're going to have a one day on math fluency. We're developing all that right now. We are trying to do some fluency activities that could be even to middle school and high school. We know sometimes that's challenging, but it will be probably focused a lot on K6, K8, where we're trying to make some activities that could go for your secondary grades as well. In the summer, we're going to have one elementary session and then one secondary session. And that's going to really dig into really the standard alignment, probably with your curriculum. What does that look like? So trying to progress through what is good standards alignment and the process. Okay. These are just the dates that we have now. I know Pat sends the slides out so you can have those dates. We're still kind of working on the fall dates, but once I have those, I will get those sent out on the listserv, newsletter, and try to get them posted as quick as I can. Okay. All right. Any questions for me? That was quick there. Okay. Oh, sorry. And there's my newsletter. If you haven't are not on my listserv. I do every month send out, have a lot of updates. Even the guidance document, I try to send out updates with the edits and things like that. So please sign up. I think we have Nate, you're next.
Oh. I'll make this quick so you can get to Lori and Stephanie. And lunch. Face it. There it is. HGSS leadership team, and we're here to provide any assistance we can for HGSS in implementing standards alignment and HQIM for your social studies teachers. We do have, our focus this year is standards alignment. We've been doing that at our PLCs across the state quarterly. So if you haven't had your teachers going to those, there's still time, and we have several partnerships we're working with. One is a really big one with the National Council for History Education to improve social studies content and align that to the standards, as well as improving structured literacy and discipline literacy within our social studies teachers at the elementary level. So this is all, it's a trainer model for elementary teachers, and it's a cohort of 60 teachers across the state, east, central, and west. And actually next week, we'll have our second round of PDs for them. And then they're going to go to the national conference and meet again, present, build their content through working with scholars, and also at the same time building that pedagogical skill. So that's a big one. We'll have that again next year with another 60. So the idea is to have these social studies elementary experts out in the field doing PDs after they get trained. We also have a partnership with KU built around Indigenous education, and we just had our first education summit. We had about 180 people there Wednesday, and then we'll have another one next year. And then we have a summer seminar, graduate level class this summer on Indigenous education. Our service center partners, Southwest Plains, SDAC, and Greenbush, those will all be in June. And those will be built around symposiums at SDAC. There will be a massive field trip from Southwest Plains. And then Greenbush is going to be building out some, how should I say it, unique coming in and then going out opportunities. So the teacher's going to come in and they may be doing some little field trips as they're building their structured literacy and aligning to the standards. And my newsletter, if you want to sign up for that, just email me and I'll get you signed up. Any questions? And I see the food piling up, so it's getting close.
All right. For science, the big news that we have is that we have dates and registration links for our spring and summer professional learning around the science standard alignment toolkit and the unpacked science standards that will be available by this summer, K through 12. The QR code and the two links, they all take you to the same place depending on how your device best works with links. And that'll take you to a one-pager that has registration links for all of the service centers with dates for all of the events. There's a lot of information on this one-pager because each service center has a slightly different model based off of how PD works best in their space. And so sometimes some of them are K-12 one-day events. Some are very grade level specific. Some days are 2 days of workshopping. So there's a lot of information on there, but they're sorted by the education service center, so by region and by date. If you have questions, just let me know. The other PD that's coming soon, but we don't yet have registration for because we're working on college credit, is that we're working on doing a virtual PD series on Zoom on Thursday nights, March to May. Similar to how we've offered some science book studies in the past. It won't be a book study, but it'll be kind of digging into some resources we can use and thinking through universal design for learning, reducing barriers for students to access really high quality science education. Our toolkits, if you didn't come to our session this morning, the high school toolkit is in finalization right now in the last step at KSDE. and should be out any time now. We have our next Zoom for science curriculum leaders on February 18th. And I hope to walk through that toolkit on that date. The middle school and elementary are currently in progress still, but we do anticipate them out this spring. And just kind of a reminder that we have this service center PD, but we also can come to you. And so in our monthly Zoom meetups with science curriculum leaders, one of the things that I was asked about is, do we have a menu of PD options that can come to districts? And so we're working on putting together some of those ideas. I know you probably can't read these from here, but they'll be in the slides that get shared out. Some of the things that we have done and partnered with districts on. And there's a QR code that will help you navigate to our newsletter. If you want to get it emailed to you, just like with Nate's, you can email me and I'll add you to our listserv. Are there any questions about science? Fabulous.
Okay, I'm going to talk about two things, English language arts as well as structured literacy on our early literacy team. These are the names of those who are on our English language arts team. These are the things that were highlighted in the ELA Standards Alignment Toolkit, and Mary Williams was in that session today. If you were able to ask her questions and get clarification on that. I know we've had some problems with links. It didn't help that we moved from .org to .gov right about the time that we launched that. So we're trying to relink everything. If you have trouble accessing something, let me know. I'm talking to IT and all of that to make sure we have this all accessible for you. So those are the topics that will be in that. We have PD that's going on around the state. We just kind of finished one on text complexity. And now the next round is starting February 13th, and it'll be on interims and mini tests and using the standards and looking at how we're doing along the way throughout the year as we are teaching the standards. So these are the dates that will be coming up. Also, there will be one following that on Focus with Writing, on the writing tenets. So I would encourage you to access your registration and information from our service centers. These are the dates that we will be out and about for the English language arts team. After those, these are other topics that will be coming up throughout the summer and then into the fall. So please be looking for that as registration links are available. Now to kind of shift, this is our early literacy dyslexia team. And I will say that Mary Larkin is doing this PD out in Sublette today at Southwestern Plains. So we're out and about as well. We've just, as of today, finished the first round with structured literacy, the why and the how, the time is now. That one finished. This will be starting, we were planning on the February 4th date. We did not have the numbers to continue with that, so that one will not be part of our dates, but the rest of those are in place and registrations are going on. After that one, we will be having Cracking the Code for Literacy. That'll be our next round. And while these all seem like standalone, you don't have to attend all of them, but they do all continue to build. And so feel free to come to as many as you can. These are free opportunities for professional learning for any teacher who's in an accredited school in Kansas, and we want to encourage you to send as many individuals as you can to these opportunities. After those, these will be the dates. I'm really excited about all of them. They kind of build through phonics and fluency and vocabulary. But this one on developmental language disorder, I don't know, are any of you in here, those that listen to the Amplify Science of Reading podcast? Raise your hands. Okay. This week, that was launched. It was Tiffany Hogan, who is a national researcher in developmental language disorder. And we were lucky to have her come and do specific PD for us in Kansas, a virtual PD, which you can access on the page that I manage. But she was a classmate of Melissa Brenner, raise your hand, and Melissa will be the one taking the lead in putting together this last PD, so we're pretty excited about that because Kansas is kind of ahead of what some of the other states are doing across the United States. So I'm just real proud of that work and hope all of you can come to all of these to learn more. I do have a newsletter that goes out once a month. I don't fill your inbox with that. Please check out the page if you have any questions or need any additional information. Any questions for me? Okay, I didn't want to stand before your lunch, but I did, so I think it's time.
Look at us, we made it, right? We survived. So Pat said lunch is ready. Are there any instructions, Pat, that we need to follow? I used to make people give me rounds of applause, so I appreciate that. Make my students do that. It has been a pleasure and an honor to work with you and for your patience with our work, and we're going to talk about that now. And so we're going to spend just a little bit of time as we wrap up today talking about just kind of the premise of the work, what's it built upon. Here recently, as we often do, a lot of our team gets to go out and just talk to a lot of educators. Good or bad, the audience that I get to spend the most time with is often our superintendents, and then certainly this group, as we meet at least quarterly, but love feedback. So your perspective, you're gonna have a chance at the end of the day today to tell us about the day, but we wanna hear from you constantly. Because what we're building and continuing to build, what we've built and continue to work on, it has to work for you and for our school leaders and our teachers and all those things. So that part's so critical, and when it doesn't work, we want to hear from you if we need to make adjustments. There's been a lot of good examples of that today. Had a number of people catch me and say, here's a concern I have, and that way we can take that back and work through the processes we have. But I was recently with a group, Jay's here somewhere, or he was, and he was with me when we heard this, but we were down at a service center and we got to hear from a lot of superintendents that had just recently come off a school improvement day. And one of them, he shared that after they got their team back in the van after the day, and he said we had a very veteran teacher who's seen all the different accreditation models since the 90s and all those things, and the comment was, this seems really good, when's it gonna change? And I think that just resonated with the group. Like, we do some things for a while and then it changes, and that's what we do, and we do that really well. And we don't wanna do that anymore. And so I think it's important to know when you find something good, and being in a lame duck status at this point, which can be an advantage. I can say whatever I want pretty much, as long as I can get back to the 460 Board of Education. But, just thinking about what this is built upon and sustaining is going to be critically important. But the theory of action really drives that. As we were working on this and the school improvement model specifically, the reality is I don't really know how to do much of that work at all. I've never taught a child to read. I haven't successfully aligned anything to standards. There's a lot of data that I don't know how to use, but you leverage the experts that you get to work with, and that's what's felt really good about this process, is you bring the right people to the table, and then you start building something with the expertise that you have, and then you present it and you hope it makes some sense. But the question about when's it going to change, I think if we can stay attached to our theory of action as a foundation, and if we really believe that, then I think we can stick with it. And we want to have a very focused direction. And so we're going to spend just the last part of our time together today talking about the school improvement effort through KISA 2.0. And some of you had a chance to visit with our accreditation team during a breakout session, but Myron is going to come up and kind of lead us through some conversations. But I think the other part that's so important is that this is not just an accreditation team project, or this is not just an accreditation team direction or focus. It's really, as we think about our program managers, all of their work now is built around how we support alignment to standards. And assessments, the same with that balanced assessment focus. And our partners with TNTP, which is all around leveraging something like instructional materials that are aligned to our standards, and all of our work around structured literacy, and that's just what we do now. And we said from the outset that if we expect action to shift in these areas, we must be able to support it. If we can't support it, it won't go on the framework. And we know not everybody needs the same degree of support, but it will be available to you. It's not ever ready quick enough. And there's a lot of things that are to come. There are a lot of things that are being developed, and that will all happen in the short term. But I'm going to invite Myron up and kind of kick things off as we start talking about action planning and what that's all about. We know different people are at different places with that. And I'm super excited to also invite Haley Steinlage up. And I'll let Myron and Haley talk about what they do, but it's a great example of how we've got a lot of cross-teaming at KSDE doing this work. So Myron.
Thank you. Thanks. I hope you guys get as excited about this work as I do. And when I see that coherent slide, I've seen it 100 times. That's when you close it. I've actually seen it. I still get excited about that work. The fact that this morning in our group meeting about action plans and about accreditation, the fact that we can't talk about accreditation without talking about school improvement. And you can't talk about school improvement without talking about accreditation. That should get you excited about the work we're doing in Kansas. That we're really accrediting systems based on the work that they do. So we are about, about halfway through. We accredit 304 systems across the state, public and accredited private. We are roughly, Haley will know all the details on this, roughly about 150, about halfway through systems who have had their check-in, their school improvement day, have their action plans submitted and ready to implement. So that is a big task. Is this working, Ben? Okay. So that's a really big task. There we go. And I can't get into that without recognizing some groups that really have been beneficial, just critical in making this work. One is our school improvement work group. At our agency, we have a work group of roughly 40 individuals to Ben's points from all across our agency. So it's not all, this information isn't all held within one department or one group of people. These 40 people, with Ben's direction, have really built this process, got this process up and running. We continue to meet regularly and continue, as he said, we're not looking to rebuild. This is a sustainable process, but we want to make sure that we continue in the first year to tweak it and make sure it's going well. So big thanks to that group. Our regional executives are here today. Unfortunately, Minnie Bruce had to go home. She was not feeling well, but those guys have just worked tirelessly. They're on the road. They have about 88 systems that they check in with, and they go to all their school improvement days. For me today, it was like a reunion to get back with these guys because I never get to see them unless it's on a Zoom meeting. But doing great work. I would say if there's a critical piece of this working well that we found this year is school improvement day facilitators. Facilitators who've gone through training, who volunteer their time, who in groups of 3 go out and work with systems and help guide them through this work as they're developing their action plans. The feedback we get on that group is phenomenal. And I know there's a lot of them in the room. So if you are a facilitator, please stand up. Give them a round of applause. These guys are doing great work. We're going to continue to do that work. We're going to continue to do training. So if you're going, that sounds fun, but I didn't get a chance to do that, you will have the opportunities to do so. And lastly, our action review team. This is a team that really provides a lot of support to the systems. As you present that action plan, this review team looks at it for clarity and for alignment, for data focus, and make sure that it's really getting you off on a good foot. So in this first year, that's been really critical as well. And Haley is going to talk to us a little bit more about that team, what they do, and some data around that. So I always want to start with, why are we doing this? What's the reason behind that? And really there are these first three things. We talk about increasing clarity, planning for consistency and sustainability, and limiting redundancy in reporting. That started before we ever got into talking about the Kansas school improvement process. That started as we were getting feedback from probably a lot of you in this room about how can we make KESA 1.0 better. And those three things came out loud and clear. Clarity, what do you want from us? What is it you're asking us to do? Consistency and sustainability. Do not change this every year as we're building it out. And then lastly, way too much redundancy in reporting. We were talking with our groups this morning. Some of you remember those 30, 40, 50 page things you turn every year. This year, the longest one we've seen is 2 pages. And that's not because it's easy. That's because we're putting the work into the important things, which is school improvement. And then lastly, when Ben came along with the school improvement model and his vision for moving that forward, and I credit he and Jay a lot with getting together and saying, these shouldn't be two different things. School improvement should be how we accredit schools. We should accredit schools based on their school improvement, and that's really what we're wanting to do. So that's a little bit about the why. We're going to share with you today some information. So we're at that midway point. And just like you guys, you evaluate your work. We also do the same thing. We have internal accountability as well. So we stopped and we started saying, okay, where are we at midway through? This review team, they're tasked with looking at those action plans, again, for clarity, alignment, for being data informed. They're the ones that will give you feedback on your action plan. So Hayden's going to walk us through some data that we have collected so far on the action plans that have been submitted. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so I'm Haley Steinloggy. I'm a part of a research and evaluation team at KSDE, working with accreditation and design on action plan things. So back in November, I got to come and share about the rubric and these guiding questions. And in the sessions this morning, we took the time to actually look at a plan and review it as if you're a reviewer. And we thought it might be also helpful to share some system examples to show how systems are able to hit the criteria in their plans. So these are questions that the review team reflects on as we're reviewing plans for the 3 criteria: clarity, alignment with the school improvement model, and data-informed decision-making. So if we think about, who put these slides? So many things to click. Clarity, so clarity of action plan. This is a district's context box from their action plan. I'm just going to read it and then I'll show you how a review team looks at it. The district will adopt a new ELA reading curriculum that better aligns with state standards and supports structured literacy. The curriculum committee will research curriculums and present 2 to 3 to all staff who teach ELA reading for a vote. The Board of Education will approve the curriculum and it will be aligned to the district budget. This is where we're looking for clarity. We want to get the action statement. What is the system doing? And when the review team reads this, we can pull apart the what, the how, and the who. So what is the system doing? How are they going to do it? And then who's involved in that action? And this is something we've added as additional clarity into the KESA application. So when you go into the application, you're asked, what action are you taking? How are you taking it? And who is implementing that action? And this, I think, has led districts to fill out that context box a little easier on the first time. When we talk about alignment with the school improvement model, this is something we see evidence of throughout the action plan. We want to make sure we understand why you selected the fundamental all the way through your anticipated next actions for future work. And systems that are doing this really well do these 3 things. They really intentionally reflect on the descriptions of the fundamental and the lead indicator for the selected structure. They don't decide to do an action and then kind of go backwards and pick the fundamental that they think works best. They're really working through the model from fundamental, structure, considering the data in the context of their own system. And they're able to explicitly state how the work in that fundamental will move forward through their actions. And they're providing evidence of the current state related to the fundamental and the structure. As far as data-informed decision-making, this kind of has two aspects to it. We want to make sure systems are setting themselves up to make data-informed decisions as they start implementing their action plan through those measures of progress. We also want to understand what informed the selection of their fundamental in the first place. So this is an example from a district. The measure of progress is in that red box, and the 6-month and 1-year targets are listed below. So they're focusing on professional development for effective instructional strategies. And if they're monitoring progress towards those targets in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, they're going to be looking at their agendas. They're going to be looking at those exit surveys and doing walkthrough observations for those instructional strategies. So this system prepared their own measure of progress, not just one that's an option that's available, but they really thought through how are we going to monitor the progress of our actions, and how is that going to support, for this system, their fundamental quality instruction. And then the other aspect of that data-informed decision-making on what informed your decision of selecting the fundamental, there's a question that asks what is the current data and evidence for your action? And it's interesting because in the sessions this morning, there was some people in the room thinking the example that we looked at didn't really report much CAP data, which surprised me because we see a lot of action plans that report performance level data on ELA or math assessments. But I think the systems that are doing really well in this area go beyond just reporting state assessment performance. They're talking about how they engage with stakeholders, describing where they're at on the fundamental. If they're doing standards alignment, they might say, we don't have a curriculum guide or pacing guides for the work that we want to do, so we know we need to start with that. So we get a full picture, not just of quantitative data where they're starting, but all of the other pieces of evidence that they've gathered that helped inform why they chose the fundamental and structure they're working on. So those are just a few examples of how systems are really concisely able to meet those criteria in their action plan. And I'm just going to take a little bit of time to walk through just a high-level state summary of what we're seeing in action plans so far. When this was prepared on Monday, we had 134 districts that have submitted their action plans. I think there's about 180 districts who've had their school improvement day. And I think as of today, we're about 140 who submitted their plans. When we look at the number of components, which is basically the fundamental that you're focusing on, most districts are just choosing one fundamental to focus on. We only have about 4 districts that are doing 2 fundamentals, structured literacy and balanced assessment. And for structures, you can have up to 2 structures per fundamental, and most are choosing to do 1, but we do have about 40% that are doing 2 structures. So they might be doing professional learning and professional collaboration. If we look at just the breakdown of fundamentals, most districts are doing standards alignment, quality instruction, structured literacy. Only 12 districts so far are focusing on balanced assessment. And I would say within the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot more come in with structured literacy. So I'll be curious at the end of the year if this changes much, or if we have systems that are really prioritizing standards alignment. Structures, I don't think this is too much of a surprise either, but most systems, about 65%, are focusing on moving their fundamental forward through doing professional learning. Professional collaboration is also pretty common. The least selected structure is that family, community, and business partnerships. We don't see that in many district action plans so far. And then if we combine those 2 data points together, this is kind of a high-level snapshot of what systems are focusing on. So professional learning and the structured literacy fundamental is what systems are doing most. But I think it's interesting that in that standards alignment, you've got a good portion of districts doing professional learning. You also have districts doing professional collaboration. So finding time for teachers to get together and actually do the work of that standards alignment. Also paired with doing that toolkit training. Educator evaluation is typically in that quality instruction area. It also has a bit of professional collaboration and learning in there as well. Tiered system of supports is in a few of those fundamentals, most often in balanced assessment, which makes sense if you're looking at standards-based and risk-based assessments to help inform your core and tier instruction. And the resource allocation is across all fundamentals as well, mostly in that structured literacy fundamental, thinking of paying incentives for letters training or making sure you have funding for letters in your PD budget. So that's just an overall snapshot. I'm curious to see how things might change at the end of the year since we're just kind of at that halfway point. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Megan.
So just a couple of things before we get to this next slide. I think, well, it's interesting to know that information. How does that help me? And we thought you'd just be interested in what systems are choosing across the state. For us, you heard Ben say earlier, part of our process is that we provide support to systems, that we aren't going to put things in there that we can't provide you support with. So for us to be able to know what kind of supports people need, what kind of things they're working on, one thing that's been really helpful for us is Haley and her team can break this down by educational service centers. You get an idea around that service center, what most systems are focusing on. So really allows us to be able to align those supports, which is, we know, an area we started working on and we want to continue to improve. So we had 2 sessions this morning and it was really kind of interesting because I knew we've got people all over the place. And let's be transparent. Year one of a process like this is kind of clunky because we have people who were starting in September. I've got teams right now who don't have their first check-in until March. So we're kind of all over the place. So if you look around the room, you're gonna have people in here who've gone through the school improvement day process, have their action plans written. We have people like we were talking to today who haven't had that check-in yet. So we wanted to provide you guys just a few minutes at your tables to just talk about this process and where you're at. If you are a system that's already gone through this process, submitted an action plan, just kind of describing to the table what your experiences were, what went well, what challenges you came across, and maybe your system has not done that yet. Maybe you haven't had your school improvement day yet. What questions would you have around this action plan development? So I want to give you a few minutes just at your tables to have that conversation.
Fall Valley, Solomon, I think we're no, checking KSDE, they're assigned to based on a region, and like she came out and helped us be prepared for our day. Started us thinking about what action plan, what our action plan is going to be, and then instead of like before we outside education team, our teachers or admin basically OBTs, so we have our cohort group of schools, and when we go, because I'm a facilitator, I don't facilitate us, but I have a facilitation day the day after ours. We facilitate discussions between school subjects on what you're doing and how you're doing it. Like go on for hours for slow search or want to know. This is new, that's why they're calling it 2.0 they've revamped the school for the model. I do so far like it better. It's all about how you do it's all aligned to our goals. I mean, we're going to choose quality and service.
Yeah, flesh
Well, we don't do that. So if I put the transfer, you do all that.
Give you time to actually learn it and right.
So they feel like that works at your rate.
They assign you what day. Like your days and meet with these schools. Be there.
So there's the question. Where'd you get
She's the leader of the dedicated
and then it does say
We're going about 3 more minutes, 3 minutes.
Very similar.
If you're a service center staff member that's wanted to meet with TNTP, they're in the Garfield group. So several have requested that, so if you're one of those, they're in the Garfield group and will meet with you.
We have some staff that they want to see. I think that's everything. Tell you what.
Well, when Ben speaks, people listen, everybody moves to a high. So another just really brief conversations about your experience so far with this school improvement process. Did anybody have any big aha moment that they wanted to share with the group based on your experience with the action planning process? There's a lot of talk going on out there. Okay, let me ask you a question. So today, Haley shared with us some of those statistics. What people are selecting in terms of fundamental structures, those who are doing multiple components, things of that sort. Is that data information that would help you guys? That we just kind of keep you posted as we go along? Okay, we're happy to do that. This is kind of that mid-year data. Were there any surprises? Anybody surprised by what you saw today? What was surprising?
I thought we'd see way more structured literacy.
You see more structured literacy. That was kind of what I projected early on too. Any other surprises, data pieces that surprised you when you saw it? Structures, fundamentals, those kinds of things? Well, we'll continue to bring that back to you and share that with you in future meetings. And right now, I'm going to turn it back over to Haley to wrap things up.
I think what's also interesting to your point about we thought we'd see more structured literacy is that not everything goes into your school improvement plan. So just because your plan is around standards alignment doesn't mean you're not also doing structured literacy, and that's kind of part of the model too, is that all of these things go together, they build on each other, and that's maybe a point of advice. Don't feel like you have to put everything in your school improvement plan, but what you do, let's make it really intentional and time back to those school improvement model. So just to wrap it up, I wanted to share some words from the review team. We're in a room together a lot, our team. No one person is reviewing a plan. It is a collaborative effort. We have about 8 people on that team. And we have really enjoyed getting a glimpse into what districts are doing. Me personally, I'm not a person who goes out into districts, so I know this is just like a small part of the work that you're doing, and it's been really exciting. I think we can really see how all of the efforts that we're just reading on the page are gonna support students. So it's really exciting. I wanna encourage you to keep developing those plans really intentionally. And a reminder, our team, we have a couple sayings that we look at the beginning of our team meetings, and one of them is feedback does not mean failure. We do not want districts to feel like our job is to criticize their plan. We try to focus on providing feedback that is positive, actionable, reasonable, and to the point. So we want to help you get that plan prepared so when you have your check-in, you know what data you need to bring because you've got really good measures of progress. And when you start thinking about implementation a year from now, you have a plan, you've got it set up, so you're putting the work in now so that you'll be successful when we start talking about implementation of your plan. So again, does not mean failure, it just means you get a little extra help, extra support, and the ultimate goal is that every system will have a plan that is ready to implement by the end of the year. That's our goal, supporting districts and meeting that expectation. And then finally, I know we still have occasional technical keys to app issues, so Rue is the help desk. Contact her emails up there. She's been really responsive in helping districts get their plans submitted. So if you think you have your plan submitted, but you haven't gotten feedback, it might be worth kind of just checking in, making sure that we receive that. And that's it. Thank you.
So, really proud of the work of our team, and much like you do in your districts, we sit down, we have tough conversations. And I just yesterday was able to meet with Haley and her team to talk through just some examples of where not everybody agrees, and so we calibrate constantly on that, but I think we're staying very consistent with our feedback. That turnaround is within 2 weeks. So once you submit that action plan, you're gonna get feedback on that. And I've talked to a few of you in the room who have told me that you were frustrated by the feedback, and so we're learning from that. And that's, like she said, like Haley talked about, that's part of what we're learning. But there's a few things that I just want to share with you. I've been able to facilitate maybe 3 school improvement days. And here's a couple of things that I feel like I can say just based on those experiences. The leadership that you provide to a team matters. Your leadership and just the presence that you have and the engagement with your team makes a huge difference. And just seeing evidence of that. And just want to remind you of how much your presence, leadership, all those things matters in that conversation. One of the things that we're talking a lot about right now that I feel like I've learned just through, it's not even really the formal parts of the day, it's more through the collaboration that's occurring at a table and you just kind of pop in and you talk to people. But one of the things that the action plan review team does that I think is really critical is trying to pull people back into the framework. So Amber called it the rainbow chart. The official title is the school improvement model. And that's what really the day is all about, evaluating that. So we start with some data, but we really get into the evaluation of how are we doing related to these fundamentals. And I just want to give you an example of what we want to avoid as we think about the state component of this thing. And I think Haley's point about there's a lot of things that you're going to do that aren't part of this school improvement plan or this action plan that you're submitting to Kansas. What we're going to say through this coherence building process is once you decide that's what you're going to do, you're going to have some internal accountability with that, and you're going to have a little external. We expect you to do that thing. That's been kind of the premise behind this from the very start. But it's not about just doing good things. It's about what is fundamental, and those words on the page really matter. And an example that I'll provide, and my team we've talked about this a lot, but had a team, a district leadership team, and they said, we're going to focus on quality instruction. We're doing Kagan cooperative learning. We're going to bring trainers in, and we want to increase engagement with our students. And as I was talking to that team, I said, that's not part of the model, even as a big fan of Kagan cooperative learning. Right? Because we can Kagan all day long, we can do structures, and we can have the PIES elements and engage kids and have all those great things, but it doesn't mean your teachers know their standards, or are able to use data, or have training aligned with the science of reading. And we really want to pull back into what is fundamental, and that's the shift. So it's not just about do Kagan. We're not saying don't, but make sure that those fundamentals are in place, and what starts to happen with those Kagan structures. They work really well, because you've got those things nailed. And so just that's the tightness and looseness of this. You have a ton of autonomy within that framework, and I think of a framework as it's framing the work. And those words matter, and those are the things that are gonna allow us to achieve that theory of action. And we'll be able to support you in that, and so just very excited about where we're at, where we can go. Your feedback is critical, so keep talking to us about what your experience is. Through these engagements and others, we're here to serve you. That's the goal. So what questions or thoughts do you have? I know a number of people requested Mr. Shane Carter. Shane escaped this week to Austin, Texas. He's down at a conference on teacher apprenticeship, but we know there's a lot of questions still around. Teacher licensure, make sure if you get a chance after we're done, come find me if you've got some of those questions. But what other things can we answer for you today before we call it a weekend? Because I think is it Friday? All right. What else can we do for you today? Before you leave, make sure you catch us if there's anything that you need. But before you leave, we would love your feedback. And you can blame me for the late lunch. I'll take the blame on that. But let us know just your experience today. And it's not just for the curriculum leaders meeting, but just things that you're hearing. Supports that are in place, we're continuing to develop those, so we want to hear from you. So there is a survey link there. If you could take the time just to complete that for us. And we'll look at that and talk as a team about what we can do better. We are in Mays at the end of, or mid-April, what date? You remember this? Oh, sorry. April 18th. You didn't get the link. I'll leave that up there. But on April 18th, we're in Mays. And we'll get out an agenda well in advance, but we'd love to see you down there as well. So with that, we are good. Thank you so much for being here and your participation, and make sure you let us know how the day went for you, and hope you have a great weekend and a safe trip home, and holler if you need anything at all. Appreciate it.